When should I use Hadoop instead of a relational database? Okay, very common question. Relational databases, first and foremost, are fantastic, right? They are great for using like lots and lots and lots of different things. I'm a big fan of relational databases. But they're not good at everything. And sometimes people run into problems with relational databases, like especially your sort of typical star schema data warehouse setup. And I think these things, I call this the unit of analysis problem. That's when someone's running into the situation, they have a unit of analysis problem. There's a few different symptoms of this problem that I want to talk about now, okay? So, indications that you're maybe not using your database as well as you could. Count distinct queries. Anytime you're doing a big aggregate count distinct query, how many people bought a television set from me in Texas today for the first time ever? Something like that, right? Any kind of sort of query where like a count distinct would be involved in answering the query tends to be kind of slow on a relational database. Not really optimal for what a relational database is designed to do, right? Not always, you can make them fast, but just in general, it kind of tends to be a problem, okay? Second symptom, even more pernicious in many ways, cursors. If you are ever using a cursor to answer an analytical query, the relational database has failed you, right? Databases are good at filtering things quickly. They're good at aggregating things quickly. They are not good at stepping through records row by row by row by row by row. It's just not what they're designed to do, right? Okay. Last symptom, perhaps the worst of all. This is the alter table of doom. Every data warehouse in the entire world, everybody, there's some table in it that you do not alter ever. Because when you do, it takes the data warehouse down. It's okay to laugh about it a little. Everyone has this problem. You're not alone. Nothing to be ashamed of. Everybody has this, right? It's totally fine. And you know, I would argue that from like, at least from a data science perspective, this is kind of funny, but it's also it's a bad problem in a lot of ways, because I, as a data scientist, can't say, hey, data warehouse architect, I need you to like load up a whole bunch of random data that I want to correlate with some of the existing data in our data warehouse, just so I can like kind of mess around with it and see like, you know, if it's useful or if there's some interesting analytics there. Because the data warehouse architect's going to ask me, well, like, what's the value of doing that? Who's the business user for that? What are we getting out of that? I'm going to be like, well, I have no idea. I need to analyze the data in order to answer that question. And the data warehouse architect's going to say to me, yeah, there's no way I'm going to like take down my data warehouse and like add a bunch of stuff in there if you can't tell me what the value is, right? Data warehouses are really important. They're doing very important financial reporting things. We can't like just mess around with them anytime a data scientist has a question, all right? So, unit of analysis problem. Fundamentally, data warehousing, star schema, is fundamentally about transactions. It's either about line items in an order or about some kind of financial transaction. That's the row of my fact table. That is the thing I am primarily analyzing when I'm asking questions in my data warehouse. And this is great. This is great for financial planning. This is great for enterprise resource planning. How many blenders do I need to have in Sheboygan in 3 months? All that kind of stuff. We have solved these problems. They're not problems anymore. It's like the 90s, the early 2000s, this is what we did, right? But the problem is they're not really great for a lot of product questions we might want to ask and a lot of marketing questions we want to ask. Because we're not really asking questions about transactions. We're asking questions about people. We're asking questions about customers. And these things are actually much more complicated, right? So relational database is fantastic for simple things, right? Anything that can fit in a row of a relational database table is great to analyze in a relational database, right? It's got a bunch of sort of, you know, static set of attributes. They're relatively simple, right? It fits in a nice tuple kind of structure, right? Strings, ints, all that kind of stuff, right? Things that are more complicated, customers, people visiting your website, right? Enormously complicated entities, right? They have a whole transaction history. They have a bunch of website visits. They have a bunch of friends. They have a bunch of tweets. They have a bunch of email interactions. They have call center logs. There's all this stuff about them, and it's growing all the time, right? And a lot of the questions that you want to ask, and you want to answer involve lots of different aspects of this data, all interacting with it all together. Okay, so when you start to get Hadoop, when you gotta go beyond the ETL stuff is very cool. But when you really get it, in terms of like the analytical power of what it can do, the idea is you get to structure your data in the way that works best for the problem you're trying to solve. This is a very powerful idea, right? It's just a file system. You get to structure the data however you want, right? Relational databases were designed for a time when CPUs were slow and disk was very expensive. So they lay out data on disk very efficiently, right? String next to int all the way down. That's why alter tables are so awful, because you have to basically rewrite all that data according to the new schema. That's why they take forever, right? That isn't the world we live in anymore. Like, CPUs are ridiculously fast. Disk is ridiculously cheap. So we get to optimize for different things now. In particular, we get to optimize for evolvability. We get to optimize for saying it should not be a big deal when I want to add a new field to some record, right? Fortunately, there are lots of solutions to this problem.